a really terrible experience working for a startup where the guy I worked for interviewed a girlfriend of mine, and afterwards, outside of the interview and reviewing her candidacy, I wasn't in that room, so this is hearsay. He said, she's a mom of a 1-year-old and she's going to be traveling for more than an hour to get here. I don't know if she can do the job. I had also had a separate conversation with him about a male friend of mine from another company who had gotten laid off. And this guy said that he found out he got laid off because he put his family first. And when I said this to my boss, I said, would you consider my friend? We're looking for front-end developers. And I said, I was really upset to find out that my old company laid him off on those grounds that he put his family first. My boss said, well, duh, Lindsay, that's how the world works. I, of course, would hire a single guy over a married woman, a woman with kids. That's just how the world works. And that, of course, didn't really jive well with me. It extended over like 6 to 8 months because we did take steps to escalate it. So, like Sheryl Sandberg said, I leaned in, I escalated, and it just got worse. It got horrible. There were lawyers, there was yelling, there was screaming, there was inappropriate conversations and negative things being said because ego got involved. People were scared to lose their jobs, and then one day everyone did lose their jobs. Not me, but the guy that worked for me, the guy he reported to, the guy he reported to, and there I was left with no supervision, no reporting structure, all the design work left on my plate, and I'm like, this is garbage. And so it did, it kept getting worse from there. So I have this story, right? I have this crazy story that I feel so passionate about sharing. But sharing it in a Medium post seems like the least effective way to share that story, right? There's so many lessons, and how do you get those lessons to a wider audience without offending people or coming off as the, oh, pity me, I don't get treated well, I'm a female in tech. Everyone has their own approach, but for me, I like to kill as many birds with one stone. And so it came to me that I had experienced also very hilarious stories in my career, and that comedy would be an effective way to say, this is a really stupid thing to do in the work environment. But also to have a discussion. So the two really funny situations are the ones that I don't think that I have any accountability in. You can tell me, I'll tell you. When I entered my career, I didn't think sexism existed anymore. And I didn't really have any tools or skills to identify what was appropriate or inappropriate. And since I work in startups where there's really no rules about what's inappropriate or appropriate, there's just a lot of shit flying around my head. The first workplace bias I experienced was actually from a woman who was in a meeting, and I was talking to the client, and I was 23 and I had my master's degree from Berkeley, and who knows how she felt about me, but I had some things going for me in that meeting that maybe she didn't. And she's like, wow, I was really surprised that you did really well in front of that client. So I'm working at a software company in San Francisco, and our CEO is largely absent. Our COO is in his 60s, and this is like his retired job, right? So we have these big clients come in, and we all go out to dinner. And the clients are at one table with the COO, the guy in his 60s, you know, he's trying to wine and dine them. And then it's me, my boss, like long curly hair, wild guy from East Bay, California, and developers. And this conversation was totally fine. Other women would feel uncomfortable, but they're having a whole conversation on the difference between intravenous and intravenous drugs, which makes me feel like a total prude. And they're talking about like mescaline and heroin and like just off the charts for me. I have no experience with these things. So that was interesting. Probably inappropriate for a work dinner, but interesting. So the COO walks over, and it's the end of the night. The clients have left. We were at a seafood restaurant. He has a lobster bib around his neck, gray hair, pot belly, wrinkles. He's drunk. He's like almost like licking the butter off of his fingers. And he, you know, puts his hands on the chairs and is like, how are you guys doing? How is everyone doing? And I'm here, he's there. There's a software developer at the end of the table who has a baseball cap on. And the CEO is, you know, traditional guy, is like, you sat through dinner with a hat on. And the software developer lifts up his hat and like brushes his hair back and said, you know, it would have looked pretty bad if I didn't wear the hat. And the CEO says, you're a good looking enough guy. If I was gay, I'd let you suck my dick. It's like HR, like yellow card, red card, like off the field, sideline. And like the funny thing is like I think it was funny. Like it was like so terrible. It was funny. I wasn't offended. I didn't feel uncomfortable. Like I have a more like, you know, like Howard Stern sense of humor, so I was okay with it. But like that was pretty hilarious. I deny any culpability in that instance, but people should probably know that that's not a comment you should really be making. He was lucky that as the only girl at that table, it wasn't something that really offended me. What did offend me was an interview I went on in 2011. I was living in Philadelphia and I interviewed for a position up in New York. So I took the train up, ran over to Union Square. My friend Derek had introduced me to this guy who was interviewing me, and I run up to, you know, it's like 4th floor or something, take the elevator up there, and I knock on the door, and this guy comes to meet me, and it's one of these big open offices, maybe not that big, but it's an open office, and he takes me into a closed room, and he's like, on the way to that room, I'm looking around, he's like, oh, you're Lindsay. That's how he greets me. Oh, you're Lindsay. You should talk to your friend about how he introduced you, because I thought you were going to be a guy. Okay. Thanks. I don't know. All right, I'll call him and let him know he should be more specific about my gender. Lindsay, we can talk about Lindsay being predominantly a female name since the 1970s, so it'd be better safe to assume I'm a girl than a guy. So we have this interview. He seems interesting enough. They're developing a simplified smartphone. Something where they've found their market now in like India and China, because it's like super cheap to make and it has all the basic functions, can connect to data internet, as well as use the cell phone towers. At the time, he was still trying to find his customers. And he's looking at my resume. And this is another reason why it's confusing that he thought I would have been a guy, is because on the conference, on the list on my resume of like conferences I had been to, it says She's Geeky 2009, which was like a one-day unconference in San Francisco with a bunch of women, and we talked about different tech topics. And he's like, oh, that's cool that you went to She's Geeky. I went to She's Geeky as well to see if women would be a good target for my unspoken simplified smartphone that has only the basic functionality. All right, cool. Now, I'm not really good at responding in the moment. I have to take time to process things. I was never good with bullies when I was younger. I didn't have good retorts, you know. So I get on the train, I go back to my parents' house, I tell my dad about the interview, and he actually, my dad's an engineer, and he's self-employed, so him and I have those things in common, and he looks at me and he's like, that wasn't right, Lindsay. Like, what he said wasn't right. And I was like, really? Oh, okay. Because I said, I don't have an idea of what's right and wrong. So I start to get angry. I'm like, really? That's not right. So then I email a bunch of my guy friends, guys I had worked with in the past, other guys that I'm friendly with from college who work in tech, and I tell them the story, and some people are like, oh, come on, like, like software engineers are like this, tech guys are like this, give him a little leeway. And other people are like, I don't know if it was really sexist, but it was mean, like, it wasn't appropriate. And then other dudes were like, rightly so, like, that's messed up. Why would he think Lindsay was a guy? So I'm like mulling on this, and I go to bed, and I wake up the next morning, and it's a Saturday morning, and I'm like, I'm gonna email him and tell him I don't want to work for him before he emails me and says he doesn't want to work with me because I'm a woman. I'm gonna make sure that I get the upper hand on this. So I email him, and I'm like, you said, very appropriately, like, you said a few things about my gender that made me uncomfortable, and I don't think we will have a good working relationship. Like, good luck to you and your business. I did not think I would get a response, but I got a response. Okay? This is what the response said. I am so sorry, Lindsay. That is not what I meant. What I meant to say is that even though Lindsay is traditionally a woman's name, your resume was so impressive, I thought you were going to be a guy.